It's not much, but the deploy is ending, and we do see it's a 44, and we're going to see a pretty typical IR-37 opening for Jedi Master Yoda. That is Lunar Lovegood on the left hand side of blue, 2 IR-37 of correction. And Stardekk is going to start on the right hand side in red with its 44 Guard Stradekk, both on Maverick Income and one of that. Okay, 3 planes starting, 109 E7, the Messerschmitt coming out also around here. Now IR-37 will take its time to bombing out of most of the ultimate cheekies and PTIS 41s. Are they going to get out of the transport? Probably not. Not all of them were out of the transport and getting pinged down at the moment. Down in the south, the IR-37 do try to bomb out the Gladia, but the 50 cal do scare back, and also with the route issue, IR-37 tried to back off for a bit and going for another strike. Yunieri Kalali, Rosieri PM were already being deployed around through all the fronts. IR-37 throwing out another batch. The third one is coming down south. HS-129 trying to bombing out the 2 SU-152s that will prove to be very dangerous up in the north. IR-37 did not throw the bomb out yet. HS-129 B2R4 is going to drop their cluster on one of the SU-152. A huge kill for Luna. Will that be enough? It's going to be pretty hard to determine. So, what we're seeing around here, Luna do have some air superiority around there, but with the 50 cal supporting that, it's not going to be completely undefended from the air. But currently, Luna went a little bit lacking in the ground force, and is going to have to rely on the M32 and the Rosieri PM for the anti-tank purposes. There is a T-3485 that looks to be absolutely dangerous. A few more things to consider. Kolarazi still have their Panzerfaust 60, but there's not enough force to deal with the T-3485. Of course, T-3485 do take a few damage, a few critical hits from the M32's APC are probably penetrated once or twice, forcing the T-3485 to fall back. But the northern high ground is already being taken for Stardekk. It's going to be really crucial for Stardekk that he can overlook down to the town and maybe using his SU-152 to strike everything down below, alongside with the T-3485 with a 2,000 meter range too. Yak 3 coming in, having some few dogfight against the BF-1 Messerschmitt and the IR-ATM. But nothing's really completely decided as at the moment. Yak 3 falls back with the 109 E7 also falling back. IR-87, the sole survivor on the air. Keep looking for the air superiority in the area. 25mm anti-air gun will be being deployed on the far northern and the far southern side for Stardekk. N2A1 coming in, still doing its half-track job of spilling out those 50 cal bullets into enemy infantry and sub-targets. On the southern side, there will be huge strike from the SU-152 and the T-3485 1944 against the Rosieri PM. Jedi Master Yoda. Lunar Lovegood did decide to put a Regita AC-75mm anti-tank gun to the forest, and also putting out a HS-129 B2R4, the cluster AP, against the armored vehicles on the high ground. redeploying and also moving in 2 more mortar, 60mm mortar into the area down south. Not going to be completely easy for the Romanian forces, as the cluster bomber were being blocked by the smokes of PTRS and Ognomachiki. Did not throw the cluster off and forced back by the 25mm AA. As usual, being taken out by the T-34-85 in the end. The solar armored vehicle was being knocked out, and also with the 45mm anti-tank gun by the enemy infantry, by the Soviet infantry, and Stardekk does looking like he's gonna push Luna out of the high ground. If Luna did not pouring out the air that he needs and the support and the reinforcement that he needs in this area. Red AC trying to pour out some HE shells against the SG-43 in the building. With the Tu-2S coming in to finish that infantry gun out. IR-37 dropping the bomb on the Gvardia, did not killing out the squad as it's already been falling back. Also pinning down the sniper area. Tu-2S being spotted and trying to head on by the Messerschmitt and the IR-80M. None of them are going to survive if they continue the pursuit, and the Tu-2S comes out alive in the end. Doesn't look like Luna is taking a full advantage on the ground, as he still really needs some more infantry and more anti-tank support around the area. All things are quiet in the south. Nothing special, nothing bad around is happening. SU-152 overlooking the central town area, and the T-34-76 will come in support if there's any armored vehicle around. More infantry trying to push across the forest. Gvardia moves in, taking one flag from Luna Lovegood. Gvardia DP also poking a hole around to the Romanian front line. Gun jammed for the AB-41 with the IR-37 trying to redeploy and trying to drop bombs on the Gvardia. $60mm being dropped. Trying to drop some shells on the Gvardia. Yak-3 coming in trying to take out the IR-37 without too many trouble. It didn't throw out any of the bombs yet. And the Rosiori trying to push into the tower, being forced back by the SU-152 and the T-34-85. Two SU-152s on the area, with one and 25mm AA trying to cover that off. Pretty solid defense, by the way. With the SG-43 coming in, it's going to be Stardekk's town to defend. And it's not going to be an extremely hard town to defend at the same time. IR-39A coming in with a cluster HE and the 152mm off map. It's going to throw off something else there, with the 109E7 and IR-80M trying to escort it. Probably Luna a bit forgetful about the airplane micro in the area. They're still spinning in a circle, and they did drop the off map around. And the 25mm do try to forcing the IR-39A off, but fail to kill it in the end. Rosiori being forced back by the Gvardia DP. 60mm tried to suppress that off, but Rosiori is already falling back. 85mm AA gun is coming into the area, thus bombarding its position. The Romanian position in the forest. The northern side of the town still being covered by Ognomachiki and PTRS smoke, and the SU-152 T-34-85 can still pouring their firepower down below. SG-43 against Roggieri. It's not going to be beautiful with the SG-43 being forced out by the Roggieri. The Schwarzlot AU, the Maxim gun, I mean glorified Maxim, coming into it, into the northern front line as well. Ebiuso coming in, SU-152 were forced to fall back by the off-map, and the Romanian infantry are pushing into the area, trying to grab one more flag for Luna as we're stepping into B phase. We're still seeing some AOB M31 22mm from both sides. Also some infantry coming into the northern and southern side for Stardekk, and while Luna is trying to secure the central front, IR-37 being forced back by the 85mm AA, which is not going to be completely enough to killing that scout plane, or there's no or, yeah, it's already over. 122mm worked as a infantry gun, trying to work as an infantry gun in the end, at this point. Saperi and Gvardia moving into the northern front, this will be quite hard for the Romanians to push things back. Pionieri Calari forces itself to move forward, not being completely caught out by the Pionieri Calari. It does now, and killed off by Saperi, and Gvardia DP of course. Lacking support, the Roggieri PM is on the verge of survival. More reinforcements. Infantry, anti-tank guns. The original Regita around there were being spotted and killed off by the... in a minute, killed off by maybe the SU-152 in the end, I'd say. Maybe, but I didn't actually see where it ends. Second off-map coming in. Going to do some damage, of course, but the off-map vehicle is also out at this moment. Well, we didn't see it. We didn't get to see it. Artillery shells pouring in. Not really doing as much damage. Yes, there's some damage. The SU-152 is killed at this moment. Most of the infantry were pinned down, and the T-34-76 were forced to fall back. But not the exact... Okay, the T-34-76 is also out at this moment. Really good off-map that takes out both the armored vehicle out from Stardekk, but Stardekk is still pushing out a few more 85mm and the IC-152 into the area, and also another T-34-85 trying to block it out in the central town. More combats coming in between Roggieri and Gvardia, with the M32 trying to provide some direct support with 60mm mortar also coming in. The 122mm decided to do nothing so far, while Stardekk's 122 had a bit of a more of a success around. On the northern side, far northern town, the Stork 3G being taken out by this T-34-85, and the Regita was being put into this position. Quite weird, but you do want to push it out into the area where you can hit the T-34-85 and supposedly taking the SU-152 out, but now the force is being threatened by the Soviet forces from the air, from the ground. 4 fighters against the Tu-2S, and this will be a pretty glorious day for the Tu-2S if he actually survives the fight. But the 109E7 does get to the tail of the plane and finishing that off. IR-39A trying to act as a scout, and the attacker with the HS-129 dropped part of its cluster, taking out the T-3485. No combat down in the south, lack of reinforcement and infantry for the Romanians. The Soviets do have a lot of infantry forces and do have the PTRS and the AT to take the LB-41 off the T-3485, leading that charge. Nonetheless, yes, the Romanians do take a flag from the Soviets, with the pinned Sapere not functioning anymore at this moment. Central side Gvardia were being spotted and ambushed a bit by the Romanian forces, but the Su-152 still there to covering the things off. 25mm were being... Ooh, another smoke that blocks off the cluster in the end, and the 25mm being strafed almost to death by the 109. 37mm comes in to cover the AA need, and the two IR-80s did their job on pinning down the southern 85mm on the northern front. Overall, yes, I'd say Luna is on a back foot once again, with another questionable division choice. It's a good division, of course, but it's just not suited for Sluts. Another time and another bomb drop for Tu-2S and a G4R6 did not closing the things off. Tu-2S does fail to kill the Rajita, but successfully and completely pinning the anti-tank gun down. 129B2R4 failed to drop the cluster once again against the Su-152, forced to fall back by the 25mm and 37mm anti-air gun, and the cluster is down. Not a very ideal phase for Luna Lovegood in the end. Still got about 3 minutes of income on this phase, and we're going into C phase, where both players are ended up in with a 80-point income. More things coming in. There are a few more artillery, the more 60mm mortar thus supporting the Pionieri Carrellari, unblocking all the forces, all the Soviet forces behind. But it's just not going to be enough unless the Stardekk comes in time to forcing the infantry back. Su-152 and a T-3485 still doing their damage, and the northern side of the map is still being pushed and really suppressed, with both sides having no chances of moving forward in the end, though. "18 minutes and 30 seconds had passed. Another minute of income, another batch of reinforcement. We're seeing Baglai Grenadier and Lieutenant Pionieri Carrellari moving in with more Stuk 3G around to the central town, trying to force a grand battle between the two clashing forces. 109E7 trying to closing in and maintaining the air superiority. The IR-37 trying to move in for another attacking run. Then an artillery coming in, the artillery commander. The artillery leader is going in for a few more leader buff in the area, while on the points, on the field, it does look like Stardekk has the superiority and advantage over Luna Lovegood, especially on the northern side, but on the central and southern ones, except for the Su-152 and the T-3485 and the 85mm AA, which is being strafed by the airplanes. It's not going to be completely decisive at this moment. 85mm does get strafed and forced to fall back in the end. Ju-88A4 trying to drop the bombs on the 85mm. That does drop a few of its 250 kilograms and 50 kilograms as well. That will do some damage. 6 hit points, but it's not enough to completely killing off that 85mm AA gun. And on the other hand, it does try to retreat from the northern side and being taken out by the enemy by the Soviet AA. A lot of them, including two 37mm guns, a 25mm gun, and an 85mm gun, which is almost out of HE shell. Battle continues, probably for 20 more minutes at this moment on the southern side, with the support of the Glide Grenadier and the Pionieri Galari trying to pushing forward, but the Stardekk is probably the only one which is not being completely suppressed by the enemy armor. The half-track is still not being taken out yet. They still need the AT gun to do the job at this moment. 88A4 trying to push the soft targets out. The southern AA gun were already being taken out, with Stardekk bringing in another reinforcement of a 37mm AA gun. The parry does stay alive and falling back, but the PTRS-41 is out at this moment. Half-track's out, and the T-3476 is the sole unit to holding up the flag around. Roggieri moving in, and that does just almost, throwing out the H3, but it's going to be forced out by the tank of Thessaloniki, or not. Maybe, just maybe not, because both had pretty similar damage at the moment, and are trading efficiently. But on the other hand, T-3485 were being taken out by the Stardekk, would still have the SU-152 and the 85mm holding up the central position, and Luna is looking for a good way on breaking the line that the Soviet had. The started to head down in the south. Stardekk can only put in some SG-43 and more Gvardia DPs onto the northern side. We're looking forward to see how the battle will turn out, especially when the northern side is probably going to be stabilized for a few minutes later. We started taking the advantage of superior forces around there, maybe taking out one or two more flags around in the northern side, while Luna is going to have a pretty decent advantage down in the south. If granted that they take down the Gvardia, and also the heavy units down in the south were almost nothing else. Yeah, the SU-152, the T-3485, the 85mm were all being taken out. There's only a 25mm AA and an SU-76M trying to holding out as a pretty good gun. Gvardia will hold, but won't hold for long as the Romanian reinforcement comes. And Luna might get a breakthrough down south, and that they did, and seizing that high ground that will prove to be pretty crucial for the later stages of the battle. Before taking out that 25mm gun proved to be very crucial at this moment. Gvardia completely pinned down, and that gives the flag to Luna, making it a 12-12. Going to be stabilized for a second while the SU-76M casually taking out the AB Hawk with their AP shell. Roggieri continues to push in, almost trying to reinforce the central front. They do have the objective of seizing the high ground from the Soviet. IR-37 moves in, maybe going in for another run. The AA were a bit far away from the northern front line, but the 85mm will still be functional at this moment with this last HE shell being loaded. against the IR-37 with the 37mm gun also available to fire. 2 star ones, each of them, in the north and the central high ground. The breakthrough on the center? Lackluster, to be honest here. U2S does drop its bomb on the Baglai Grenadier. It's not going to do a lot of damage, but it is some damage being dealt with. And the Tu-2S trying to go around for a bit, and the 2 IR-80M failed to killing off the Tu-2S. They need another circle around, and it's not going to be fast enough to chasing the plane down. And it's going to force to fall back by the 37mm AA, which is pretty desperate. Which is in a pretty desperate attempt. And maybe that will get itself killed. But the 37mm were forced to fall back because of the Stug 3G trying to forcing it off. But the Stug 3G, by doing so, also exposed himself to a ZIS-3 anti-tank gun. The chain of counter continues. As we're seeing the 122mm coming in to try and bombarding the 37mm. Up in the northern high ground for staying that so long at this moment. Still a 12-12 after 26 minutes. But Luna has only its own 50% of its own points to bleed, while Stardekk almost still sitting in full. Luna does need a good trade out in the center and possibly trying to control the open area for the 5th Cavalry to actually win this match. T-34-85 1944 comes into the center, thus trying to locking down the open area around there. With the help of the ZIS-3, it's a bit more stabilized at this moment. Limited success that will force Luna to seek another attempt of breakthrough, especially up in the north or in the center. The center is probably a much more better position to place their Stug and a few more support units like the Tatsam T-60 maybe for the 5th Cavalry, and some Rosita can also be deployed around there to break through the Soviet defense around the area. But overall, it's up to Luna and his decision that will make or break in this game. Pionieri assault finally gets into the forest, and that will push some of the Gvardias out of the forest. That will be really dangerous for Stardekk around this area, as there probably will not be enough units in range to killing off a Pionieri assault. Granted, if they're gonna be microed well, but you gotta doubt Stardekk will micro a lot better than Luna at this point. We've seen Pionieri assault trying to cross the road, taking half the casualty, half the squad as casualty. And Rosiori trying to cross the open ground as well, under the firepower of the SG-43, both of them being pinned down and forced to fall back, with more Gvardia DP trying to seize the high ground. Artillery being poured into the area. Two of the artilleries, the Rosita and the 122mm, two 122mm are trying to bombard the northern, an AA gun. It's not going to be very effective, to be honest with you. But it will do some damage in the end. T-34-85 still survives at this moment, and forcing the Rosita to be coming out of their position. Things are not done yet, as on the southern side, Luna tried another attempt to get a breakthrough around there, thus taking out the ZIS-3 with a pretty good supporting fire, and taking a 13-11 advantage with the support of the ABU-SAW. The AB-41 is going to force off most of the units without AP value down the south. T-34-76 and the Tanko Desaniki trying to move in to support, trying to move in to seize the front line before the Romanians did, and the Romanian Air Force is coming in with full force against the Soviet anti-air. There's not much around there. The 85mm out of FGE, the 25mm lacking range, the 37mm is completely being suppressed. And the HS-129B2R4 is going finally dropping its cluster shell onto the SU-152 and killing that off. Ju-88A4 trying to bombarding the infantry, and IR-37 trying to finishing off the 37mm did not succeed to do so. That will leave the BF-109E7 to strafe that down, and the G4R6 trying to strafing the Sniperi in the end. The northern anti-air is being broken. I said it again, the northern anti-air is probably broken by now. And 25mm being the sole anti-air gun that's being functioned, with the 37-2 of the 37mm far behind in the central high ground. Not going to be functional at this moment. And all of a sudden, Luna is gaining the advantage down in the south again. Really look good looking for Luna if they still have enough long-range anti-tank capability against the T-34s, and most potentially more SU-152s in the area. T-34-76 is in the ground and taking out the glide grenadiers, one squad at a time. The Rosiori in the area is not going to stop to guard the DP from far away. But most importantly, the Rosita AC is in position, taking out the T-34-76, maybe the T-34-85 later on. It's going to be a really good infantry fight around there. The T-34-85 is going to be hit by the Rosita AC, and that's not gonna take out. The second shot has failed to hit the target, and it's still a good fight between the Gvardia and the Glide Grenadier. On more high grounds, Colorazzi are in a 1-3 against 2 PTIS squad and a Wiesvot UPR squad, and then the Tenko Desaniki comes in, and with the Molotov, it's not going to be really good for the infantry force of the Romanians. It's not enough for the Romanians to take over with only 2 half infantry squads. That does granted that the Soviet will take the high ground back briefly. At this moment, the Romanian Air Force is still full strength around the area. That will break the Soviet line in the end. Back to the south, light things happening. The Glide Grenadier trying to cross the road, being caught out by the Tango Desaniki. That will give one more flag to Stardekk in the end. Not enough infantry reinforcement for Luna Lovegood to actually holding out the southern front line, as Stardekk pushing in another SU-152, a scary target for Luna to deal with. We will have to see the second wave of the Romanian Air Force. With them being pulled in full effect, it's going to regain the initiative in the northern side, or trying to enlarge the breakthrough down the south. It's all up to decisions. Stardekk is continuing to pour in reinforcement into the south. That does look like the balance of the north will be pretty much broken in the end, with one more HS-129 is going to the north, trying to take in out the T-34-85 with its cluster. More Glide Grenadier coming in that will force the infantry force of the northern town into Romanian hand. Without sufficient AA, 25mm will step in to try and stop the 129, but it's not gonna be enough to stop the cluster, and that will kill the T-34-85 in the end. On the central high ground, the Luna finally focuses on the flag around there. It does look like there are a few concerns about the SG-43 and the AA gun in the area, but it's not the main concern, as the AA gun were really far away, and there's only one Ognomachiki trying to holding out the crossroad flag at this point. With the northern town being briefly partly taken by the Romanian infantry, yeah, that will give Luna a 14-10 advantage into the 35-minute mark. But Glide Grenadier moves in and trying to pushing the Tanko Thessaloniki Gvardias out of their position. That will force the whole northern town to be retaken by the Romanians. Visual UPR and the PTRS 41 are being pushed out by the Romanian infantry reinforcements. In the end, the Tanko Thessaloniki is already out, but do take a lot. But the Rosiori, the first squad there, does take a lot of casualty. Around at this position, Gvardia DP trying to push out into the open, did get fired and pinned down by the Hotchkiss and the bread of a C-47mm, and the Regita were closed out its HE and smoke shell, only engaging the armored target in the area. And while SU-152 had some moment against the Regita AC, it does looking like the SU-152 did not take any damage from the Romanian gun. T-3485 comes in to get another few more shots against the Rosiori. That does not mean that the Soviet infantry will gain a lot of advantage out in the open, especially by the Hotchkiss. Does look like the balance is breaking in the north and the south for both sides. Now they're going to really stabilize the front back into a 50-50 line around there. And the Soviet control out in the open, the northern open ground is being taken back by the Romanians one after one, and another wave of Romanian Air Force will be expected to coming out soon. But the Tu-2S is the one that's coming out first and trying to bombing out the Rosiori in the building. That does mean the two squads were pinned down and one of them forced to fall back, and the flag into Stardekk hand. Two 109 E7s and IR-80Ms are coming in as the fighter, air superiority fighter, but the Tu-2S is out already. With 37mm trying to covering off the southern anti-air force. Regita trying to fire HE shells at the SG-43, but were being taken out in the end. But bright side to Luna, he's taking back the central high ground and is looking for a really good breakthrough again around this area. Northern side, Rosiori pushing out of the Gvardia. The T-3485 come in to secure with more Gvardia DPs and snipering, trying to move in. 16-8 for Luna as the flag around the central town on the Stardekk side is being taken. And that's will be the game sealed for Luna Lovegood for the second game. Quite an incredible breakout for Luna, indeed. Another attacker, IR-37, comes in, and yeah. That's it, 39 minutes 7 seconds of fighting. Stardekk decides to surrender in with a 16-8 disadvantage. On the kill sheets, 1,390 points worth of kill. More than Stardekk. That's what the Luna did. A huge KD advantage around there that will proceed and Killing off that AA net is really essential for Luna to capitalize on its air superiority advantage, and we do see some of the Romanian Air Force being used at most of its potential. Of course, the efforts of the Yak 3, the Tu-2S, cannot be ignored. They do take out a few planes and do take out some of the ground units, and the Su-152 and T-34-85s delivering an enormous amount of suppression to the enemy unit. But things about that, not enough kills, not enough trades. And that does mean the victory for the Romanians in the end, which just 129 B2R4 after a few more unfortunate bombing run that does gain himself quite some important kills of Su-152s and T-34-85s, IR-80Ms, killing off 2 Yak 3s that will give the Romanians an initiative on the air superiority with a 152mm off-map, delivering pretty good damage comparing to the 380mm railroad battery that we've seen in the last game. Rosiori do get a few more good kills on the infantry, and a good use of the 122mm that does bombing out the 85mm and 25mm AA gun and suppressing the 37mm as well. Generally, good play for both players, and congratulations to both players. They achieved another tie in the league history for this best of 2 game.